The live-action Snow White movie has finally released, and this movie has been put down a bunch by the lead actress herself and then the fans from what the lead actress had said. So I was expecting to go into this movie to at least have an interesting time, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts of the film right now. So, like I said, this movie was surrounded by a lot of controversy, some of that having to be with Rachel Zegler herself, which is the main actress who plays Snow White. She said that the original story was just a girl and then a prince that was a stalker coming in to kiss her, and she did not like the original story itself. She said that she really wanted this movie to be more of Snow White leading it and just trying to be the hero of her own story, and so that threw a lot of people through a loop and really mad because the Snow White story is a classic, and so you're redoing all of that. They even went so far as to say that the prince of this movie could have been cut out of the movie. And so that is a hot take. A lot of people were angry with this, and so since you're thinking of the prince is in the most important part of the film, that's like the most classic part. Whenever you think of Snow White, he's kissing her and waking her up from the sleep. Like, that is the most classic part. That's what I think of in the story, and they said that they were not supposed to have that. So that was the first big controversy. The other one surrounds the dwarves themselves. A lot of people were discussing about just having to cast these dwarves in the roles. Peter Dinklage was one of the main people that actually spoke out about this. He was talking about how it's just more of typecasting and that they should be able to do more than their own roles other than just focusing on their height. They should be more of just focusing on their talents instead. And so this movie is typecasting towards smaller people. And so there's just a lot of controversy surrounding this film, and I went into it thinking this is going to be a train wreck because there was just so much negative talk surrounding this film and just about it. However, I will say there was more good than I thought there was going to be in this film. And so with that, let's get into the good of the film. Alright, so starting with the good, I wanted to start with the best good part of the film to the least good part of this film. And the best part would be Rachel Zegler herself. There's really not an explanation needed. She does portray Snow White. She can sing, she can do her acting chops, and there's a lot of like expansion to the role of Snow White itself, and she does a good job bringing that in. Now, some parts of this, I'm like, she doesn't really portray the character of Snow White as we know. Like, this one is more brave and bold than the original take, and so a lot of this can feel like it's somewhat of a different character or just a different mindset for Snow White. But she does a good job, and you really can't say anything bad against that. So that was the first good thing. The next good thing about this film is the music. Now, they do bring back the original songs, however, there are some new additional songs, and the additional songs were very catchy to my audience this movie was playing in. I had a bunch of people sitting next to me singing the songs, the new ones, as the movie went along, which shows how popular these will be outside of the movie itself. I think that a lot of people will end up listening to this soundtrack more than what they've had to with other past live-action Disney movies, and so a lot of people had fun with the music. It wasn't for me, but a lot of the people that went in for the music or liked the original music were singing along, and I'm not for singing along in the theaters, but that just goes to show how popular this movie soundtrack may be outside of the movie itself. Following along with that, this movie is not just a readaptation of the original Snow White film. This one adds new scenes to it and expands the Snow White world, and I think it did a good job for me at least. A lot of people I would hear from would say that it was kind of bad. Now, I will say, with those people saying that it was bad, they do have a point. A lot of the new scenes and new stuff added to this film to make it more like a blockbuster. A lot of these are stolen from other movies, such as Robin Hood or The Lion King. A lot of those plot points or plot beats were repeated in this film, and it's not done to the standard of those movies either. They kind of fall flat, but it did well for me. Like, I didn't really notice it until someone else said it. And so if you're a casual fan, you're gonna like this part. It won't like take you out of the experience. It is kind of noticeable with the Robin Hood elements and the Lion King elements because of what they do in the back half. But for the other plot points from other movies that they kind of pull in, It's not very noticeable if you're not trained to kind of watch all that stuff. So that one was done really well. They don't just do the exact movie you've seen and make it into live action. They add some more content, some more stuff that actually kind of makes sense for some points. They also kind of, however, backtrack some of the original story and say, yeah, you thought this character was this, but actually they're this. And so that part was meh, but for the most part, them adding new scenes and was a good thing, because a lot of these, with these live action Disney remakes, we're thinking, why are you going to just remake the same movie we've already seen? And that one's a classic, so why would you redo a classic? Where this one actually adds in new scenes for people that haven't seen the original one or have seen the original one. So that was a good thing for me. With this movie, they added a bunch of additional scenes, like I was talking about, a bunch of additional plot beats, and they actually redid the back half of the film. So there was a bunch of reshoots. And so when I was walking into this movie, I really didn't know much about the reshoots. I know they had them and they pushed this movie back for a couple of years now, but I didn't really like explore why or what really happened. And again, it was more with the Rachel Zegler saying that Snow White will be the hero to her own story. And honestly, with those reshoots, I couldn't tell throughout the movie. And so the story itself was way more cohesive than you would actually have thought it would be if you've been following the behind the scenes. And it actually makes sense. Like, they all tie it all together. And so with the reshoots, I think they did a good job of putting it into a movie and making it more cohesive and feel like more of an actual story, which is a good thing for this film. The real final thing that I really enjoyed, which is very small, is actually the director Mark Webb, who worked on this film, also did The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And so if you remember from those movies, the colorization of just everything is very vibrant, and he brings that to this movie. And so every time you see something like a heightened up color, it's supposed to portray happiness or just a happy vibe. Whereas when they break it more dense and a dense color, it makes it more sad. And so they do a really good job portraying different colorizations between different moments and scenes, because it could be really bad for the people. They could feel really impoverished and they're all dressing in grays. And so that'll be really cool. But they also do, when they're really happy, they're all dressing in white or like a very vibrant color. And so it means more to the film and actually gets more across, in my opinion. Now, I do know they do these in musicals all the time, but I think this one worked really well in this movie and for its favor. But there's a lot of people that may say that this was just a little too vibrant for them, which I understand as well. That was all for the good section, so let's move on to the mix section. So we're moving on to the mix section, and I won't lie, I did look up a couple of reviews before I actually posted mine, and so a bunch of them were using the outside facts of this film. For example, like I just talked about, how they did a bunch of reshoots. There's a lot more of these people that I see online talking about these reshoots and things, and then bringing them into the actual movie itself and how the movie is portrayed with a bunch of this outside information. I don't want to do that, and so I think the movie worked well on itself. However, if you're bringing in the outside information, this is why it's in the mix section, because it does bring in an interesting topic. This movie spent $250 million for its budget, and that is absolutely insane, because this movie has to make $750 million back to be profitable. And so what they have in this film world, or when you go through film school, they teach you about 4 quadrant films. And so these are just splitting up the industry in 4 quadrants. So this would be males under 25 years old, females under 25 years old, and then both male and female over 25 years old. Those are all 4 quadrants, and you can see an image on the screen right here. So when you're doing a big blockbuster that spends $250 million, you want to hit right in the middle and hit all of these quadrants. However, when you watch this movie, they really only hit 1 to 2 of these, and that would be the female side of it all. This movie, I didn't hate watching it as a male. Like, I didn't dread watching it. However, it is way more tailored to the females, which makes sense because it is a Disney princess movie. But when you're spending $250 million on this movie, you want to get as many people to see this film as you can. And so realistically, there was not enough action for me as a male. It was more of just the story, the singing. And so I feel like they could have done way more to actually heighten up the male side of things or bring some more interesting ideas into it. I'm not saying it all has to be bloody fights, but just like more action scenes or calmer action scenes. that we've seen in other Disney movies. I think that could have worked better in this film. But realistically, you can't hold that against this film. I said it works well, but this is definitely tailored to the younger female side as well, of just the more female side of everything. There's not much for the male brain to comprehend, where there's not enough fights or just something to be like, oh, that was really cool, I'm glad I went to go see that. No, but I didn't dread watching the movie as well. So that was kind of the mix. I didn't want to use all of like the outside information, putting it towards the movie itself. I just feel like there is some interesting conversations to be held here. So tell me what your thoughts on about the movie so far for you are. But really, that was all for the mix. So let's move on to the bad of the film. Now, for the bad of the film, I won't sugarcoat it. Gal Gadot is done one of her worst performances, unfortunately, in this movie. It just feels like she's way more cartoony in the role than everybody else is, where she's moving more viciously or vibrantly, and her accent's there, and she's like really trying to portray cartoonic emotion, is what I kind of phrase it as. And no one else in the cast is really doing that. Everyone's more portraying themselves as normal people, where Gal Gadot is just more on her own stage doing her own crazy little antics. And unfortunately, I just wish she was given more to where she took it more seriously instead of cartoonish. I don't hate her as much as other people do when she's acting. I actually kind of like her in the Wonder Woman movies, even the Fast and Furious movies. But for the most part, people don't love her as an actress. I can understand why just in this movie itself. Also, her singing was not great. Her original song, like the song itself, wasn't terrible. I just didn't think she did a great job singing. The next bad thing about this film is actually the dwarves. Now, if you've seen the first look images, they look as lifeless as you would think, and in the first look images as well. And so there's a lot of good things about the dwarves in this movie. I think they did a good job throughout the movie. However, their look themselves are just not it. I think they were done in the reshoots. They originally had a different set of dwarves that they were going to use, and then just threw that out the window. And so they ended up going with these CGI looking ones. And I did not like the designs for most of them. They did look creepy, and I heard a lot of the girls in the theater were kind of scared as well for them, which is not good when it's supposed to be a kids movie. So that was one thing that I would say was a negative on this film. And if you guys have seen any of my other reviews, you guys will know that I hate when they montage over important parts of the story itself. For example, in this one, this is not really a spoiler, but her mom dies, and they just kind of resemble that with a lake and her reflection just disappearing at one point, and then said, her mom died. At least show a scene that kind of connects it. I understand, like, it happened. It was not anything like crazy where if you took it out of the film, it did anything different. But I don't like it when they montage over things. And so that was one thing that I was kind of negative on that most people won't really care about. And again, the last thing, I already said this in the very first half of the good, but there are some times in this movie where Snow White does actually not feel like the character that we've known for this long. She makes questionable decisions, or she's more brave in some other scenarios, where other scenarios she just kind of hides. It was fine. Like, it doesn't like throw me out of the movie, honestly. I just think that this character that we're following does not always act like the character we know. And some part of that is up to interpretation, especially because this is a new adaptation of it. But just so you know, that was one of the other small flaws I had in this film. Alright, so that was all for the bad. Real quickly, before we get into the final scorecard, I would love to hear your thoughts about the film down in the comments below, or just anything surrounding this film in general. There's a lot of interesting topics that could be had about with this film, and so I just want to start a conversation with you, and so please reach out, and then I will respond to everyone that actually puts a comment down in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video, go ahead and like and subscribe. It would really help get my channel to be built up more and actually send this channel to more people and recommend it to more people. That would mean a lot to me. I try to make videos weekly over movie news as well as movie reviews, and I'm trying to work on other original content. So if you guys have any suggestions, please list them again in the comments below. And with that, let's get into the final scorecard. Alright, with this live action version of Snow White, I'm actually going to give the plot a 7 out of 10. Now, this film does have a lot of good plot beats in it, and it is way more cohesive than I actually thought this movie would be. However, this is a readaptation, and so you can't give full credit to the film, I feel like, in some ways, but it does a solid enough job, and I think that most people will enjoy the way the story goes. And for the dialogue, I'm actually going to give it a 6 out of 10 because they use a lot of the original movie and it works well in some circumstances. However, there are some parts that they added that just didn't work for me, as well as like how they were phrasing things and what they were saying. So 6 out of 10 for me on the dialogue itself. And with action, I'm actually going to give it a 6 out of 10. Now, they do add some scenes that add some action in this movie, which was really well appreciated on my part. However, there's nothing really crazy and it doesn't go out and above and beyond with the action. I just think there was some good action and they added some, so we'll give it a 6 out of 10. With suspense, I actually gave it a 4 out of 10. Most people have seen the original, and so this one is really no different. They do add some scenes in this film. However, this one isn't really any different. So if you haven't seen the original one, this one I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 because you might think, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. But like for people that have already seen it, there's really no suspense at all in this film. So 4 out of 10, unfortunately. Previous work, I actually put it right on par with the other previous work, such as Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. Those are like the main ones I've seen and many of you will have seen. And so I actually gave this one a 7 out of 10. Now, this isn't my taste of movie itself. I'd rather watch the Spider-Man movies, but this movie is not bad. So I think 7 out of 10 is being gracious. So there we go. All right, for the final review, the casual fans, I think will have a lot of fun with this, specifically if you're a female little girl. That's the casual fans that they're trying to pick at, and this is their target audience. So I gave it an 8 out of 10. The next one is actually families. Now, families are 50-50, I feel like. And so if you have a bunch of little girls, go take them to see this one. I give it a 6 out of 10. However, if you're mostly a male family, it's not worth it. You can skip this one. Genre fans, I'm actually going to give it a 7 out of 10. If you like these live action Disney remakes, this one is not a bad one, so I put it at a 7 out of 10. Film buffs, I actually gave the score a 6 out of 10. Again, this one's not really harmful, but it's not a great film. And so this one's kind of just a 6 out of 10 for us. And then critics, I gave it a 5 out of 10, just because there's a lot of things that do work. However, if you're like really diving deep into the film itself, there's not much for you here. Unfortunately, they don't do anything like really big, really interesting. And so this one's a 5 out of 10. You should probably just rewatch the original one. Now is the moment in time. I would say you should either stream, skip, or run. And if you're a casual fan, I say you run to this one. I didn't hate it. I think this one would be a good watch over on the big screen. So if you're gonna have fun with it either way. For families, I will say you should probably run to see this one as well. This one's a nice outing for you guys if you were looking for something fun to do. If not, stream it. You won't be missing much. For genre fans, I would say, again, if you liked the other live action Disney remakes, this one's not a bad one. You guys can go either run or stream this one. And then for film buffs, I would say you can run to this one as well. However, it's nothing crazy. So I would honestly more recommend stream this movie than run to it. And then critics, you should skip it, but you'll see it anyways. So there is that answer for you as well. All right, so that was just my review of the live action Snow White movie. I had fun with it. I didn't think it was anything crazy. And so if you guys want to go watch this one, go watch it. If you've seen it though, please list in the comments below. Why did you like this movie? Why did you hate it? I want to hear all of your thoughts, as well as hit the likes button and the subscribe button. That'll help me out so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. And if you guys really want to, go ahead and watch my video to the left. This one I worked really hard on, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. So go ahead and support my other ones as well, because I work just as hard on those as well. So thank you guys for watching, and be safe out there.